Good afternoon and welcome to a special edition of today's live chat. Yesterday, we received an email updating all of us on the budget restraints plaguing our department. Our executive director reached out to me and immediately scheduled a live chat so that we could bring us all into the conversation. This, like any chat, is a safe place to ask questions. It doesn't matter your rank or your title. Anyone can ask a question. I'll only read your name, or I'll only read your question, never your name. So send your questions to DOC_questions. Mr. Stansel, thanks for reaching out yesterday and bringing us all into the conversation. We have so many questions today.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. I really enjoy talking to staff and getting information out because I truly believe information is knowledge is power, and the more we can share that, the more power, the better everyone understands each individual role in this process. But this is one of those conversations that I wish I didn't have to have, but it's a reality. Anyone that's been listening into any of these chats or listening into any of the talks that I do when we're out in the field, you've heard me talking about budget concerns, and this is going to be a tight budget this year. And we are now getting to the point where we have to take some significant steps to try to control the area that we're in now. I won't go way into detail about that because Mitch is going to talk about it. But what I will say is this, I was reading over the questions that's been submitted, and there's one that refers to, you said over the last couple of months, we were in this point because of the last couple of months. I've been talking about this for the last couple of months. And the reason that we didn't have a meeting like this to go this deep into it is because there were steps in the process that could assist us with this deficit that Mitch is going to talk about. Well, we've exhausted all of those steps now. And we've been told that we need to find the money to make up the shortfall that we have. So it wasn't like we were holding out, or it wasn't like we were withholding information, or it wasn't like this just all of a sudden happened yesterday. This is something that we've been trying to manage for quite some time. If you remember, you can go back and listen to it. There was a chat that we did, and I was talking about overtime. I was talking about the need to reduce overtime, and I talked about the budget then. Subsequent chats, I've talked about the budget. We don't have an option to not balance our budget. It's just not an option. It's in statute. It's a requirement for us as a department, and we have to get there. And unfortunately, it's going to take some tight times to get us where we need to be. But like everything else we do in the department, we will get there. So since there are so many questions, I'll stop there. If I had time to close out, and then I'll say more. But Rebecca, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Director Stansel. Are we going to be seeing a big enough raise that makes a difference in the near future? Colorado housing market is way too much for these wages.
Yeah, so I think I will start here, Rebecca. I think I'll be taking most of these. So for those of you that have not met me, my name is Mitch Carstens. I'm the Deputy Director for Finance and Administration for the department. So on this one, we are going through the current legislative process for next fiscal year, which is FY25. You'll hear us talk a lot about that here this time. Right now, within the budget that the JBC is creating for the long bill, there is still a 3% across the board increase for all employees, as well as step raises are still included inside of that. The legislative process, obviously the Joint Budget Committee is the one creating the funding for next year. They are wrapping up. Hopefully, they should be wrapping up by the end of the week. And what is called the long bill will move to the House and the Senate after that. Both of those bodies then need to approve that. The governor then signs it. So it's still got a couple more steps in the process. But right now, the 3% across the board and the step raises are still included in that budget process.
Thank you. So you're going to answer most of these questions. So if Director Stansel, if you want to jump in at any moment, just however you want to jump in. Will you seek to pull funding from specific areas such as reentry to cover needed expenses elsewhere?
So for right now, we are looking at every single line item and budget area across the department, including the reentry. So that is the parole side of the house. We are looking at every pot of money. That's what we have been asked to do in order to balance the budget, is to look at every single dollar across the department. And so nothing is off the table at this point to fill this gap.
What about employee appreciation this week? How will facilities offices, will they receive any celebratory money for those activities?
Yeah, so this question did come up when we talked to the AAs, the appointing authorities across the department. We need to fill the gap. We will continue to fill the gap. I think we appreciate employees across the department. We want to be able to do employee appreciation, to be able to do that, and we are going to try our best in order to keep funds available for those things. As we go through this process of finding and filling the gap, that is a priority of ours, is to keep money to be able to do those celebratory activities, but we will continue to work through that as best we can.
Thank you. How is it that we're 4 positions short and have been for 2 years and our department has budget constraints? While I realize general supplies come from a different account than staff, do we not have an overall budget for clinical services? Where's the money going?
Yeah, so when we look at positions, we look at more than just unit by unit. So we are looking at all 6,500 employees and FTE that we have across the department and trying to understand the budget. That's what budget does, is we look at that kind of from the holistic side across the department, being able to look at that. So we have looked at the number of vacant positions we have, the funding that we have, and the number of filled positions in order to calculate where we are going to end the year. So while I understand this individual may have 4 open positions in their area, we are looking at it from a macro level, kind of across the entire department. General supplies, that is a different line item. They are correct in that in each area. Each unit, I shouldn't say each, most units across the department have their own overall budget. So clinical services does have their own overall budget that they can spend on that. And then we put that out into each facility for them to use inside of their clinical area. Where money goes, that kind of depends on where it's at. So that can go to office supplies, it can go to a number of different things that are inside of that, and what that line item inside of the long bill dictates that it can be spent on. So just because it's in one area doesn't mean we can spend it on whatever we want. If it's in medication lines, we have to spend it on medication. And we're in a place now where we have a deficit, and the legislature and the governor's office has said, you need to look at everything. So you need to be able to balance that kind of across the state. So.
Thank you. That makes sense. The email that we got yesterday states that over the past months, we have encountered significant challenges in our budget due to various factors, which we have had notable impact on our personal services budget. Could you please explain what these specific challenges have been and why? What are these factors? Were they unexpected?
Yeah, so as Andre said, us in the budget office, we are looking at this almost every single day. We continue to look at our personal services on an ongoing basis. Sorry about that. Things have continued to change. We have gone through that process. As Andre said, we have the supplemental process, figure setting, that are all opportunities for us to true up those dollars with the Joint Budget Committee at the state level. We have continued to do that. We have continued to make improvements in certain areas, but in the personal services lines in particular, we have been overexpended what we anticipated for overtime for most of the year. We tried to curtail that. It kind of kept going up for a number of months. The last month or two, it's gone down slightly, which has been great. But our overtime has been over what we anticipated for the year, as has our shift differential. So the way that our budget is set for shift differential, we are over quite a bit on that, as well as contract medical staff and the services that we need inside of there. Those are kind of 3 major things. We continue to work on how we can minimize those, but keeping safety and security at foremost of what we actually need to do to keep our staff and inmates safe across the department. But as the fiscal year goes along, we continue to track those and trend those and try to do what we can to minimize those costs and bring them under control along the way. We are just now to a point where we need to make other alterations to make sure that we can balance the budget.
Would those alterations be reducing a footprint at headquarters again and going back to a remote schedule?
Yeah, so headquarters, we are in the midst of a 10-year lease on headquarters. So if we were to choose to back out of our headquarters lease, we would actually have to pay quite a bit of penalties on that. So that does not benefit the department to do that. What we have done, though, at headquarters is maximizing the space. And so those in hybrid work environments, we are able to do drop-in locations, consolidate work locations so that not everybody has their own cubicle if they're only in a couple of days a week, being able to do that. By doing that over the last, I would say probably year and a half, we have freed up space within headquarters, and that is why the training academy moved up and we dropped a lease at the Abbey down in Canyon City. We did the same thing and moved the pharmacy into headquarters, and we're able to drop a lease somewhere else. So as other leases are dropping off, we are able to utilize and maximize space that we have at headquarters. That is an ongoing process. We continue to meet with each of the units at headquarters on how much space is needed to right size those and fit in as many people as possible and being able to minimize the costs there.
Thank you. Let's pivot just a little bit and talk about something that's been that's kind of stirring a little bit. There's been a lot of talk about employees who receive raises as part of a promotion being required to pay them back as they were somehow erroneously given. My understanding has always been that the acceptance of a promotional opportunity was effectively a contract for work, the same as an initial offer letter. If an employee accepted a promotion along with the increased liability of responsibilities of that new role and was offered compensation as part of that acceptance, it seems that both highly unethical to retract and demand repayment of what an employee understood as the new wage rate and a violation of the contract on the part of DOC. How was this error discovered?
So there's a couple of questions that nested underneath this one, and we're going to bounce between myself in budget and we have payroll and HR because each of these questions take a little bit different of an area. So the error was discovered upon a routine request for information that came from those employees in that area to review those pays.
How are you validating the wage repayment process?
Yeah, so employees that were identified, HR and payroll go through that validating process within the system of calculating overpayments and the recommendation sheets that come with that and double checking from there.
So how are you calculating what is owed?
Yeah, so the calculating process goes back and looks at base pay, cost of living increases, shift differentials, overpayments. All of that is then compared to what was paid and what should have been paid, and then combines those together. So it's a pretty lengthy process to be able to do that.
And Rebecca, I want to jump in here real quick. I just want to make this point. So when this all first started, and these things were coming up, and we're finding them. The original idea was let's see what we could forgive and let's see what we can't. Well, the state controller is the only one that can forgive debt. Is the only one. I as the ED cannot waive or forgive debt. That has to come from the state controller. It's almost like if you get an overpayment on your state taxes, definitely your federal taxes, there's a process of who can waive that and who can't. And no one in the Department of Corrections inside of our department has the authority to waive those debts. That is solely at the whim of the Colorado State Controller for the entire state of Colorado. We appealed, we did everything we could for these staff to try to get rid of this or get this waived. And the final decision was DOC, you don't have the authority to waive that. So I just want to make sure that's clear, that we fought as much as we possibly could. We exhausted every step that we had in the process, but ultimately that decision to demand that payback came from the state controller.
But they've been paying income taxes and wages, child support, and alimony calculations are made based on the income. How are you accounting for the employee's overpayment into those systems or loss based on perceived income? Will you be submitting some kind of state or federal income amendment for these affected employees?
Yeah, so these employees should request changes to income for child support and enforcement of those adjustments to do that. The current amount being deducted is based on the current order, so we'll adjust that based on needed of new orders. Taxes are being adjusted for each payment that's taken out over the current pay year. So based on the overpayment is being deducted in the current time frame, there's no need to amend past and prior taxes as they receive those in previous years. And we are working and making sure that we're communicating with those employees as we go through that process to make sure that they understand that as well, and making sure that they know kind of next steps.
But with so many DOC employees living paycheck to paycheck with multiple jobs, how do you think the demand of repayment will impact the employee retention, or the reputation of DOC and the recruitment of new employees?
Yeah, so I think Andre alluded to this as well. There's the state fiscal rule 9-5 does require the DOC, when an overpayment is identified, that we retrieve that payment. We do not have the ability to not seek the repayment. I understand the concern that have been labeled here, but we also need to follow the state fiscal policy in doing that and making sure that we are following those policies.
Understood. Thank you. How do you expect any employee to willingly accept a new role with the benefits of that role may be retracted?
And I'm going to pass these over to HR. I think the next couple are on the HR side, so I'll pass them over to Michelle.
Good afternoon, everybody. Michelle Cottingham, Director of HR. So on this question, we understand the concerns, and each case is unique. We are continuing to evaluate our current processes in order to eliminate any errors occurring in the future.
Where does that leave the rest of the department in regards to retention of staff and willingness to promote now that the norm is not 10% per promotion?
So previously, OHR did not prepare offer letters for promotions, but instead the offer was made verbally by the appointing authority, and then it was captured on the referral list. However, that has since changed, and now an employee and the department have that captured in writing and signed by the employee prior to moving into the new position.
This next question says, with the recent pay mistakes, can we please ask HR, ESU to start issuing acceptance letters stating the promotional new salary in writing? I think that's just what you just said. So,
yep, thank you.
I'm wrong. Yep. Will the case managers that are promoting from Sergeant CO2 that received a 10% increase in pay owe the department money? And if so, will there be a deduction in salary?
I'll take this one. Each situation is unique, and we have not identified any case managers that were overpaid, but you're welcome to reach out to discuss, if you have an individual situation, and we'll look at those on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. With the greatest budgetary impact in personal services dollars, in what ways will promotions, transfers, and hiring of new positions be affected between now and June 30th?
That's a great question. So while the shortfall is in the biggest part in our personal services, we are going to look at all budget lines across the department to be able to continue to hire, promote, and transfer individuals within the department to make sure that we are getting the right people in the right spots and being able to help the department in safety and security. We're committed to that, and we will continue to be committed to that through this process as we identify kind of the gaps and where else we can pull from in the department.
Thanks. This is a parole question. I'm not sure if you're going to take it or not. If we had such a budget crisis, how does parole afford another FAU supervisor spot?
I've got that one. Hold on 1 second, please. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. Dave Wolfsgruber, Director of Parole. This is an existing funded position necessitated by the expansion of responsibilities within the Fugitive Apprehension Unit in December 2023, resulting in the unit's assumption of an additional 1,000 parole absconder cases.
Thank you. Is the state considering furlough days again for non-essential staff?
At this time, we are not looking at furloughs. We are looking at, again, the rest of the budget to be able to find the solution and stay outside of furloughs. So,
what about early retirement buyouts?
We are also not looking at early buyouts for retirement at this point, as it would have a negative impact on the goals of what we are trying to achieve to fill the gap.
And if I could say, add to this here too, the budget crisis we're in now is for the current year we're in now, which ends in June 30th. So we have to tighten up our belt now and find money to cover the shortages we have now for the next couple of months between now and June 30th. So this is not a long time, thing. You won't hear us talk about any plans to change anyone's base building pay. You won't hear any of that. We are looking at overtime because we have to control overtime. We're looking at travel, training costs. We're looking at things like that. But I want everybody to make sure they understand this is not a long-term. We don't intend to be in this for a long-term measure. Once we get through the end of this fiscal year and we start off anew in the next fiscal year, then things kind of reset. So this is a temporary thing that we're having to do.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for clarifying. What is the chances this affects legislation approving step raises in the next fiscal year?
Yeah, so these are kind of two different processes, as kind of Andre actually just alluded to. So one is in the current fiscal year, that is our approved budget. That is where our gap is that we need to be able to fill. The legislature is working on FY25, which has the across the board and step raises, kind of totally separate processes. And the legislature will continue to work on their approval of step raises for next year over the coming weeks.
When will we know if the budget for the step raises is approved, and or will it happen for 24-25?
Yeah, so this is an ongoing process like we've talked about. So the JBC, again, should be finishing up, the Joint Budget Committee should be finishing up their work on the bill by the end of the week. They say that it's going to hit the floor by Monday. The House will then approve, then the Senate, then it will go to the governor for signature. Generally, the long bill is signed somewhere in mid-May, and they are on target to be able to do that and complete that again this year for signature sometime in mid-May. Once that's signed, we will let the department know that the long bill is signed, which will have step raises in it.
Thank you. This person writes in that she sees or he sees a lot of unnecessary spending. Why are some offices ordering new furniture when we're under a budget constraint?
Yeah, so as we talked about this budget constraint, we have continued to work on. We just announced this out yesterday with the announcement across the department of pulling back on those funds. So things that were purchased in the past were in the past. We're going to focus on where we are now and where we need to go between now and the end of the fiscal year. But we are looking at some purchases that are mid-process that we can pull back on between now and when something is delivered to make sure that we are doing right by the DOC budget as well as the taxpayers of Colorado.
Will the SWORD Academy be postponed? It doesn't seem fiscally responsible to incur the cost of overtime it will create with the people attending and teaching the academy and the impact at the facility level, as well as other associated costs that go along with a 10-day training.
At this time, there's no cancellation. We currently have 10 candidates that are scheduled to attend the academy. And as a department, we need to ensure that we have enough SWORD operators within the Colorado Department of Corrections.
Thank you. Is there any talk of a salary raise or locality pay? The average CO1 salary after taxes is $3,800. In Chaffee County, the cost of living average is basically the same quantity because of rent prices, as you are well aware. The facility is getting almost fully staffed, so overtime is not an option. Do you have any plans on helping staff that you can share?
Yeah, so for right now, for FY25, which again will start July 1st, they are in the process of approving having across the board increase as well as step increases. Locality pay is currently not an option for the state. There has been some decisions in the past from their AG's office on that. HR and budget, though, are going to reach out to the AG's office again for more guidance on this and what that could look like in exploring statutorily what we could do within the state for locality pay. But that has not been an option up until this point by state statute.
Thank you. Is there any data available regarding how many DOC employees engage in outside employment to supplement their income to include hours and earnings?
Yes, OHR has received 52 outside work permits in 2024 and 211 last year. A good portion of these requests are for work at the state fair for a couple of weeks in the summer. We only receive those forms that are approved and started, and that tracking mechanism began in 2023. Of those permits, we do not have knowledge if the work is needed to supplement the employee's income. AR 1450-06 requires that permits are submitted when outside employment begins, when there's a change in employment, or their appointing authority changes.
Thank you. Did someone else have something to say? No? Okay. I just wanted to take a second and remind everybody that question, my work email, my instant message is absolutely blowing up. So if you could send those questions to DOC_questions, you'd have a much better chance to get those questions answered than sending them to my chat or my regular inbox. So if you'll send them to DOC_questions. Let's move on. Allowing as well as requiring captains and equivalents to volunteer to work posts to mitigate mandatory overtime and job burnout is a valuable practice that allows additional mentoring opportunities outside of the established PMP structure. Is there any plan to increase the incentive pay amount available to captains and equivalents for bringing their experience to additional shifts and areas of operation?
Yeah, so I think this is a great opportunity for mentorship, and we've continued to talk about this. Under our current budget constraints, that's not going to be an option for us, but I think this is something that prison operations has looked at for next year and when budgets are refreshed for us.
Thank you. Please explain how step raises for time in class will not create pay disparities among equivalent job classes and/or pay codes for staff in new class codes with substantial years of state service. Also, is there a process in place for discretionary increases to account for state service? If not, how does that align with elevating the state as an employer of choice?
So I've talked about this before. COENs and the state representatives that were at the table negotiated time and classification, not years of state service. So providing that the step raises are passed in the long bill, we are obligated to adhere to that decision.
If DOC is so short on staff, why does the appeal process take so long for people to get a response if DOC is going to allow them to reapply?
Appeals are processed and considered by the State Personnel Board, and state agencies unfortunately do not schedule that process.
On a department level, has DOC considered any compensation, benefits, or recognition for trainers and other staff who provide support functions in addition to their jobs?
Yes, so we continue to look at this as a department. There is some great work happening in HR and the TAG team to be able to compile this information together and create recommendations to the executive team to continue to move forward on this and make strides forward.
How does the largest state agency get into this big of a budget deficit considering our vacancy savings?
So currently, because of the number of staff that DOC has, as well as our overtime spending, contract staff, shift differential, we actually do not have salary savings within the department. And that is part of what is causing this gap, is that we have. We continue to work on that, but I do want to kind of put into perspective, the gap that we are trying to fill is slightly less than 4% of the total overall DOC budget. And that's why we believe that we can mitigate it within house and make sure that we can balance the budget for the state.
Why is it that DOC, a state agency, struggles for officer funding when the county and city agencies don't? They're able to pay higher wages, provide adequate training and equipment where the state can't. CDOC can pay for several months of rent for offenders, mechanical services to fix offender vehicles, appliances, etc., but can't pay adequate or competitive wages. Why is this?
Yeah, so I think the most important one on this one is DOC is a state agency. While the city and counties have different tax structures and tax recovery programs, and how they choose to spend their money is different than the state. So those are kind of different processes that the state runs within. On the question about kind of the reentry services that are listed there, those are called out in the long bill through that process and what that funding should go towards, and the reentry process for our inmates when they are released, and the items that they can spend that money on is called out specifically in the long bill for those programs.
Thank you. Let's pivot to clinical services really quick and ask this question. When will the MAP programs and facilities be reevaluated? Staff and inmates are being affected by this program greatly. This introduction has caused more fighting, facility disruptions, and is being sought out by people who aren't given the prescriptions in the first place to get high all the time.
Thank you for this question. The MAP program is consistently being reevaluated, and if there are specific recommendations from staff on the operation solutions at a facility-based level, please take those to your leadership.
Thank you, Director. It has been reported to staff that overtime has now changed. If you work 12 or more hours straight, you will not incur overtime unless you exceed 85 hours of work in a pay period. Can you confirm that this is true or not? If it is, why was it not voted on by WINS or staff given any say in this matter at all?
I can take this one. So Adrienne Sanchez, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs. So we actually have a department agenda bill making its way through the legislative process at this time. That's House Bill 24-1228. This agenda bill will enable the department to offer flexible and/or compressed scheduling options to correctional series staff. Previously, we were unable to do this because the current statutory language requires that in all cases where an officer works 12 or more hours in one 24-hour period, they will be paid overtime for the time they work that exceeds 8.5 hours. This bill gives the department the flexibility to offer and consider alternative schedules, but does not change overtime pay when overtime is worked. This bill only provides an option, not a requirement, and if your facility is operating on back-to-back 12-hour shifts, due to short staffing, that is still overtime. This exemption would only apply if your normal shift is a specialized alternative or compressed work schedule. For example, if your facility does not modify to compressed or alternative schedules of 4x10 or 3x12, and you remain on normal days, then the statutory requirement remains the same regarding overtime. If your facility does modify to 4x10 or 3x12 schedules, and you are asked to cover an extra shift or pick up a day, overtime is still going to apply. If there's an emergency and everyone in the facility is now covering extra shifts of any number of hours, those are still overtime hours. CDOC worked with COWINS prior to proposing this legislation, and COWINS supports this modification to the statute as a means to offer some flexibility and work-life balance into the correctional series scheduling process, but it is in no way meant to cut, reduce, or remove overtime.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that answer. I think that was very thorough. Are there any plans to eliminate or reduce the tuition reimbursement benefit?
So at this time, we see that as a very valuable benefit within the department, and we're all right, I'm lost on my questions here. Yes, we see it as a great benefit to the department and want to continue to do that program. We do not have plans to reduce the tuition reimbursement program at this time. This is a program that also is partially funded through DPA, so the Department of Personnel and Administration, that helps offset the cost to DOC, so we are not paying 100% of that when we do those reimbursements.
I was hoping you could clarify the policy for lateral moves, transfers, or promotional move within the state jobs, whether it's in the same facility or not. I was told in basic training that you could change positions at any time and you would get a new position. However, now that I'm in the job, I asked for a transfer to be closer to where I live, and they said I must stay put for 6 months. Please clarify which one is correct and why there's conflicting information out there.
Thank you for that. For this individual, I would ask that they reach out to me directly and we can discuss this, because there's a couple of unique things about that. So I believe I'm the only Cottingham in the department, so please reach out to me.
Thank you. Are there any plans or steps being taken so that the budget doesn't have the same issue next fiscal year?
Yes, we are actively working on plans through OSPB, which is the Office of State Budget and Planning in the Governor's Office, as well as the Joint Budget Committee, on making sure that the department has the funding that it needs for next fiscal year, and making sure what avenues we can take to alleviate this, that it's not a problem again next year.
I was wondering if staff will be receiving notification of calculated time in job series in preparation for step raise adjustments.
Yes, per the partnership agreement, employees will be notified of preliminary class placement by March 31st. And I would remind everyone to please make sure that your home address is accurate, because those will be sent to home address. And also a reminder that there is a link to the DPA frequently asked questions regarding step increases on the DOCNet homepage.
Thank you. So, Mitch, how much off are we on the budget?
We continue to refine the number and see as we go through different payroll cycles and look at overtime and differentials and things like that that hit the system each month. But we believe the gap to be somewhere right now around $17 million.
What is the plan to recapture the shortage?
So we are actively working on that. The business managers and the budget office across the department are looking at funds that are unencumbered and unspent that can be reallocated and reused. Again, we are going to be looking at every budget and every line item across the department in order to achieve and filling this gap that we have.
Are you also looking at canteen-supported funds, such as education and programming budgets? Can the community colleges continue to teach at facilities, and/or will education and programming continue to be allowed to spend their budgets minus employee spending in travel and training that use general funds?
Yeah, so the canteen-supported funds are actually statutorily called out in a different line item and have statutory requirements that are different than the general fund dollars. We will continue to follow the statutory abilities that we have on the canteen funds to be able to spend those properly and outlaid in the ways that we can do that to help cover the cost.
Are there any facility closures being considered that you can speak about? Why planned closure of the Beacon at Skyline was reversed so quickly after we were told it was necessary to assist with the budget crisis?
So on this one, no facility closures are being considered at this time. That is linked to our bed caseload and not to total overall dollars in the department. So those are slightly different things that have to go through JBC and the Joint Budget Committee on what that looks like. The Beacon at Skyline was during our supplemental process, is what that's called, a couple months ago. We needed to reduce number of beds based on prison caseload projections that the DCJ does. We worked with OSPB and JBC on those number of beds that needed to happen and making sure that we had the correct number of beds available within the department that met the projections.
Thank you. This is a test question, but I promise I did not write it. Will the meeting be available for staff to view at a later time?
You might have to answer that one, Rebecca. That's for you as the technical assistant of the meeting.
Yes, they're always available. I always record these. They're always available on the front page of DocNet under Executive Director Live Chats. Give it just a little bit of time after we finish, and I'll post them certainly by the end of the afternoon. With the abundance of staff getting overpaid, is there a possibility of having all employees getting their pay audited annually to minimize the damage of what is owed and to make sure that we are not wasting funds that can be used elsewhere?
Yep.
So I do want to ease everyone's fear. So far, we have detected 5 pay errors, and we are definitely addressing those. Mitch, I don't know if you want to talk about how we're auditing these.
Yes, so we are in the process, payroll and HR working together, and we will be going through a process of auditing all incentives and pays within the department within the next coming months to make sure that everything is correct and up to date. And then we are changing processes inside of those to make sure that errors are caught on the front side and not in the rears to be able to help with that process.
Hey, Rebecca, I want to jump in on this one too. I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to give a shout out to the payroll team, the staff that do payroll. You know, we have 6,000 plus employees in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and they process 6,000 plus payroll functions a month, every month, so people can get paid. Although we don't want to have one, we don't want to have any, but we are only aware of 5 right now. 5 out of 6,000 plus that they do every month. So I got to give them a shout out. If you're an individual that's impacted by it, you may not feel the same as I do. And trust me, I was deeply involved with trying to work ways around those 5. However, just to bring things in perspective, 6,000 plus a month that are getting paid through the payroll team. And we know of 5 mistakes. Like I said, we want to avoid all of them, but 5 out of 6,000 a month. That's quite a few transactions that they do every month. So I want to give a shout out to the payroll team and HR and budget and all those guys.
Thank you for doing that. Has there ever been any consideration for merit raises versus step raises? Being compensated for being an exemplary employee might bring some pride back into the workplace. It's frustrating to see no accountability, but higher wages being handed out just because of length of employment.
Yeah, so as of right now, there is no consideration for those within the budget system, so JBC or the legislative process. If this were to happen, I'm going to lean over on HR, probably through the renegotiation of the partnership agreement that will be coming up.
Is project pay going away for those staff temporarily working outside of their job classification on departmental initiatives?
As of right now, we do not have any plans to change those. No.
Can you please clarify which positions and which promotions were affected by the overpayment? I don't know if you can speak to that or if that is confidential.
I can just say that the errors there were 3 errors in parole and 2 in prison ops.
Thank you. DOC prior to recently has historically always given 10% increases for promotions. The error that is being discussed was past promotional pay. These were employees given 10% at the time of their promotion or more.
I really don't want to speak to the nuances about those 5 individuals.
Yeah, out of the privacy of those staff, we won't go into that.
What can the department do to be a better advocate for para changes for its employees?
You know, I don't know how to guide somebody on that. So I would ask that they reach out to me and I'll involve our benefits team on that.
Thank you. Are you looking at dropping the lease? Oh, did someone have another one? Did I miss someone? Okay. Are you looking at dropping the lease on the West Denver parole office and moving CPOs to Broadway to conserve the cost of leases?
Dave, do you want to take that one?
I'll start. You can chime in if you'd like. We're evaluating all 19 locations for utilization and efficiency. So it's very premature to comment on that particular situation involving those two offices, but we are in concert with Finance and Administration evaluating all facility leases.
Thank you. Are there any plans or steps being taken so that the budget doesn't have the same issue next year? That one was already answered. Thank you. For my team working behind the scenes, do we have any more questions? I'll give them a second to put any more questions in the inbox.
So Rebecca, while they're looking at that, people are emailing to me and to different people options of ways to save money, and that is outstanding. I should have started off by saying that if you have any suggestions, any ideas, we're like I said, we're looking at everything. We're looking and evaluating every penny that's spent to get us through these last couple of months of the fiscal year. So if you have recommendations or ideas or things in your area that you think will be helpful for us to know, please feel free to send that. You can email them to me, you can email them to Gina, you can email them to the DOC questions box, and we'll capture those. Or if this is over, as always, I give my number out all the time. You can text me, email me, call me, send it by carrier pigeon. I don't care how you get it to me because we want to hear everyone's voice.
We definitely do. I don't see any more questions in the inbox for us, Director Stansel.
All right, so I just want to say this. When we started this as your exec team, we committed to being transparent. We committed to communicating. We all agreed that we could do better as communicating in the department. I don't think there's anyone out there listening to this, and those that will listen to this will disagree with that. We can all improve on communication. So as keep with our promise of transparency and communicating, we will continue to have these meetings. Like we said then, unfortunately, there's going to be times we're going to have to deliver tough news like we're delivering right now. But there again, we're committed to being transparent. The very easy thing would have been to just struggle through this and not say anything. That would have been easy, but it's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to let everyone know what the department is going through and what we're doing to correct it. You didn't hear us say anything about changing to base building salaries. You didn't hear there's a question about furloughs, but that is not on the table. We're not looking at furloughs. We're in a crisis, but we don't have to go nuclear yet. We are spending for now, so we can take a look at all of the budget lines to see if there's funds in those lines that we can utilize to address this now $17 million deficit that we're in. We are fully confident that we will find the money, and we're confident about that. But this step that we're taking now to put a pause on spending is a necessary step. Because just like if you're monitoring your home budget and you run into a crisis, a furnace goes out at your home and you have to drop $7,000 like I just had to do a month ago, before you write that check for $7,000, you look at how can you afford that. You look at, everything that comes, every part of your budget, you're going to assess that to see where can I move money to take care of that $7,000 debt. That's the same thing that we're doing in the department. This is not a need. This is not a cause for panic. This is not a cause to worry if your jobs are in jeopardy or if we're going to make any significant changes that's going to have a crazy impact on the department. This is a precautionary step that we need to take to give us time to look at where is all of the money at and what can we move around to cover this deficit. So this is an attempt. This is an attempt to keep you all in the loop, to keep you informed of what's going on in the department. We committed to that. We will stay committed to that. Things like training, things like Correctional Workers Week, those are extremely important to us as your exec staff. And once we find that 17 million of the monies that's we're going to make sure we prioritize to make sure that those things that are important to the department are still taken care of. Someone asked the question, are we doing things to prevent this from happening again next year? We absolutely are. We absolutely are. Now, can I guarantee you that we won't have to tighten our budget at the end of next year? No, I cannot, because there's some things that we can't control. We can't control overtime. We can't control emergencies. We can't control, certain maintenance issues in facilities. Those are all things that are out of our control, just like they are in your own home budget. But I can tell you, we're committed to doing everything we have to do to prevent us from having to take these drastic steps again next year. I can commit that to you. I can promise that to you. But what I can't promise is that we won't run into a budget issue next year. We're not alone in this. Department of Corrections, one of the questions was, how could the largest department have this type of issue? We're not alone. The state of Colorado is almost $200 million in deficit. If you think I'm joking, Google it. There's the school budgets that are short. There's DHS is going through challenges. Every department is facing budgetary challenges because of this is the first real year that we are back to our true budgets and we don't have federal opera funds to help us out. So across the board for the entire state of Colorado, many states are in very similar situations that we're in right now. They may not have taken the steps that we've taken to address the shortage, but they're all feeling the shortage. I go to the cabinet meeting every Monday morning, and this is one of the main topics that we talk about every Monday morning, the budget and staffing shortages. So your team is doing everything we can to get us out of this as quickly as possible. We will continue to communicate, whether it's calls like this or whether it's emails like was sent out yesterday. We will continue to commit to that because we think it's important. Give us some grace. If we're saying things that you don't like or you don't want to hear or it's not great news, just keep in mind we didn't have to say that at all. But as your exec team, we've chosen to communicate everything that we possibly can and be as transparent as possible so no one gets surprised by these things. So do we have any other questions come in, Rebecca?
Let me check. I don't see any in the sheet. I don't see any more in the sheet.
All right, well, if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, or if you asked the question and it went to Rebecca's personal box and we didn't get a chance to read it, then we will still try to get you an answer. If you don't get an answer, as always, you can reach out to me via email, via text, via however you want to get it to me. The other members on the team are also equally as willing to take those. They don't give out their phone numbers like I do, but they all have emails and it's very easy to find them. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope this was helpful, and we will continue to be as transparent as we can in issues that's affecting the department. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Stansel. Thank you especially to Mitch Karstens for taking the bulk of those questions for us, and to all the rest of the executive team for pitching in on those questions. This was a lot of questions here, and I just appreciate you bringing all of us into this conversation. Thank you so much, and we will see all of you on April 9th at our next live chat. Thank you.